back to Based MMA. In this video, I'm going to be talking about Sean Strickland. And Sean Strickland has been done dirty by the UFC. And I'm not here to complain about the decision against Dricus du Plessis where I thought he had won the fight. It is what it is. I've accepted the outcome. He lost against Dricus du Plessis by a very close decision. It was a very, very close fight. So I'm not here to complain about the fight against Dricus du Plessis. However, I feel like this kind of has gone under the radar with MMA fans, but Sean Strickland has been done very, very dirty. And it's not only because he's definitely not getting the rematch against Israel Adesanya, especially with UFC 305 taking place in Perth, and obviously that's in Australia. It's most likely going to be Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya next for the title. But the UFC went ahead and doubled down with that with announcing Hamza Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker as a #1 contender matchups, which means that they're pretty much telling Sean Strickland, like, fuck you, you're definitely not getting the rematch, and you're not even fighting for the #1 contender next, which is insane, man. It's insane. I know that Sean Strickland didn't have any title defenses, but he had a very close fight against Dricus du Plessis. And when that fight took place, I think a lot of us wanted the rematch for Sean Strickland. To be totally honest with you guys, I'm not even like the biggest Sean Strickland fan. I'm not like this hardcore. If anything, I think the Sean Strickland fans are kind of stupid. They have like low IQ and stuff. So I'm not even the biggest Sean Strickland fan. However, as an MMA fan, I did want to see the fight get run back just because the fight was pretty close. I personally thought Sean Strickland had won the fight. Like I said, I'm not here to complain about the outcome. It is what it is. That's MMA judging. You could make a solid argument that Dricus du Plessis won that second round. However, what you cannot deny is that Sean Strickland has been done dirty because, look, I knew when he lost that decision that he was not going to get an immediate rematch against Dricus du Plessis. As much as a lot of us fans wanted that to happen, I knew that was not going to happen. Why? Because the Israel Adesanya fight is too big of a fight to pass up. Because if you make Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis the rematch, and then you make Israel Adesanya versus Hamza Chimaev, there's a chance that Hamza Chimaev beats Israel Adesanya, and then look, let's say Dricus du Plessis beats Sean Strickland, or maybe Sean Strickland wins that fight. Maybe you don't get to see Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya for the title, right? Especially if, let's say, Sean Strickland would have won a rematch and then Hamza Chimaev beats Israel Adesanya. There's less likely. You put the fight between Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya at risk by doing those kind of matchups. So I knew that the UFC was not going to pass on the opportunity to give Israel Adesanya the title shot against Dricus du Plessis. It is what it is. Obviously, I don't think he deserves it, especially after he got humiliated by Sean Strickland for 5 rounds. It's Sean Strickland that fought him in like a 1-month notice, which is absolutely insane. Look, props to Sean Strickland. However, I knew they were not going to give Sean Strickland the rematch. But I thought, you know what? They're not going to give Sean Strickland the rematch, but I think they're going to give him a #1 contender fight against Hamza Chimaev. You guys remember before Hamza Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker got announced, I put a poll up saying the potential opponents that Hamza Chimaev could face at UFC Saudi Arabia, and one of those options was Sean Strickland. If anything, I thought Sean Strickland had a higher likelihood of fighting Hamza Chimaev at UFC Saudi Arabia than Robert Whittaker. I even thought Jared Cannonier had a bigger chance of fighting Hamza Chimaev than Robert Whittaker. I thought that was absolutely insane. And even though I love the matchup between Robert Whittaker and Hamza Chimaev, that is not the fight that should be taking place. If anything, it should have been Sean Strickland versus Hamza Chimaev for a #1 contender fight. The winner of that then fights the winner of Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis, which is most likely going to take place at UFC 305 in Perth. And I think that made a lot more sense, especially with the kind of performance that Sean Strickland had against Dricus du Plessis. But with this, the UFC is almost treating Sean Strickland like if he got knocked out by Dricus du Plessis, or like if he had gotten outclassed by Dricus, when that's not really the case. So Sean Strickland has already been done dirty. And some of you guys, look, some guy on Twitter told me, well, why should Sean Strickland take a fight, man. Why? Because I'm encouraging Sean Strickland to take a fight now. Look, he's already been done dirty. Like, the damage has already been made. And if Sean Strickland doesn't take a fight next, which, let's look at the middleweight rankings. Obviously, Dricus and Izzy are gonna go at it. Robert Whitaker versus Hamza Chimaev. So who is there out? Which opponent could Sean Strickland face right now? I mean, he could face Jerry Cannonier, who he's already fought. He could face Marvin Vettori, but he's a teammate of his. He could maybe face Brendan Allen, but maybe he's not that interested in that fight. Or Paulo Costa. And Paulo Costa has come out and said that he was offered Sean Strickland for UFC 302, but that Sean Strickland has declined the fight, man. And let me tell you why I'm against Sean Strickland declining the fight. I know that Paulo Costa is coming off a loss against Robert Whitaker. And if you think about it, there's not a lot of upside for Sean Strickland going into this fight. I mean, if he beats Paulo Costa, is he going to fight for the title next? Absolutely not. But like I said, the damage has already been made. And I feel like for Sean Strickland, he's going to need a couple more wins to get back to the title. And if I were Sean Strickland right now in his position, what I'd do is that I'd ask the UFC to give me the biggest fights possible for a big bag. And I would ask for a fight against Paulo Costa for UFC 303, maybe 304 if Sean Strickland wants more time to prepare for that fight. And he should take the fight. Look, I know a lot of you guys think that he's going to get the rematch. Guys, Sean Strickland is not going to get the rematch. And if he decides to wait in the sidelines and not fight anybody and wait to see what happens in the middleweight division, Sean Strickland is going to become irrelevant. The UFC is not going to care, man. Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya are going to fight. The winner of that is going to face Hamza Chimaev or Robert Whitaker. And by the time Sean Strickland just waits on the sidelines, he's not going to fight for over a year. So why would Sean Strickland do that in the first place? Look, I get it. If you're a big Sean Strickland fan, you should be absolutely pissed because, of course, he has been done dirty. But right now, there's nothing else for him to do, in my opinion, but to fight Paulo Costa at UFC 302, because the build-up to that fight would be absolutely insane. It would be a banger of a matchup. I want to see it. I know that Paulo Costa is coming off a loss over Robert Whitaker, but even though he's coming off a loss over Robert Whitaker, it was a pretty fun fight. It was a pretty good performance from Paulo Costa, a guy who hadn't fought in over a year. So I think this is a good fight for Paulo Costa and Sean Strickland. I understand that obviously there's more to lose for Sean Strickland and more to gain for Paulo Costa. It's not a fight that really makes sense, but there's nobody else out there. And I feel like, I mean, the Jerry Cannonier fight is always there for Sean Strickland, but I mean, it's not a very entertaining fight in my opinion. They could run that back at the Apex, but I feel like if I were Sean Strickland, I would ask for two fighters. I would ask for Paulo Costa, a very winnable fight for him. And I would ask for Kamaru Usman, a big name. And if you're able to fight Kamaru Usman, you're going to be on a pay-per-view. You're going to be on a pay-per-view on the main card. And I feel like right now, Sean Strickland needs to, realize that, he said he doesn't care about the belt, but I think he does actually care about the belt. And he knows he's been done dirty. Like I said, I completely understand why Sean Strickland is mad. But at this point, you've already lost. Accept your losses and take big fights now on pay-per-views against Paulo Costa and Kamaru Usman. Like, those are the only fights I would take if I were Sean Strickland. Don't fight Brendan Allen. Don't fight Jerry Cannonier. Let Jerry Cannonier fight Imavov. Let Brendan Allen fight Marvin Vettori. And you get the big fights on big pay-per-views, on International Fight Week, at UFC 302, at UFC 305. You're a big star now. He has a lot of fans. But I just don't like this attitude from Sean Strickland, not wanting to take fights because he knows he's been done dirty by the UFC, which is an absolute fact. He's absolutely right. He's been absolutely done dirty by the UFC, but there's nothing else to do, man. Life isn't fair. The UFC is definitely not fair. I mean, we've seen maybe Dustin Poirier is about to get a title shot, most likely. So we know that in the UFC, the things that should happen, the right things, don't always happen. You know what I'm saying? And if I were Sean Strickland right now, at this point, you're already a big star. Might as well get the big fights. Get the bag, man. Fight Paulo Costa. The buildup would be hilarious. The press conference would be amazing. Get on a press conference with Kobe Covington. I think there's still a lot of potential for Sean Strickland to make a lot of money, to be in some big fights, get revenge against Kamaru Usman at 185. So I feel like right now Sean Strickland is just mad and he's being petty just on the fact that he's not getting the rematch against Dricus du Plessis, which was a very close fight. And I understand, man, but he needs to get over it. He absolutely needs to get over it. He needs to fight Paulo Costa. And, maybe we haven't heard anything from Sean Strickland. Maybe he declined that fight because, he wasn't getting paid enough, or, they didn't offer a bag, or maybe it's too short notice for him. So whatever it is, I hope the UFC accommodates to him, because let's be honest, like, Sean Strickland, if he was any other champion, they would probably give him a title shot next, a rematch next, or they give him a #1 contender fight, which they've already passed on it by giving Khamzat Chimaev Robert Whittaker. Like, the moment they announced Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker, I knew that Sean Strickland was already a lost cause. Like, I already knew he was done. I knew that he had already been screwed, man. And that's exactly what happened. He got screwed. It is what it is. So if I was Sean Strickland, take a fight against Paulo Costa, take a fight against Kamaru Usman. And even though maybe those fights are not going to get you closer to the title, because right now, obviously, we probably have DDP versus Izzy next, and then the winner is going to fight Khamzat Chimaev versus or Robert Whittaker probably later in the year. Sean Strickland, just get some fun fights, man. You're clearly improving. You're clearly a very great fighter. I think you could beat a Kamaru Usman. I think you could beat a Paulo Costa. And those are big fights, man. Don't go back to the Apex and fight Imavov again, or Jared Cannonier, or Brendan Allen. Get some big fights and get against some big names like Paulo Costa and Kamaru Usman, and your career will be just fine. So yeah, guys, those are my thoughts on Sean Strickland getting fucked over by the UFC. Make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. I feel like not enough people are talking about this, but it's something that I've definitely noticed. Let me know down your thoughts, and I'll see you guys in the next one.